All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about Jürgen Habermas. Now, you can think of him as one of the last great defenders of reason, in an era that's gotten pretty suspicious of the whole idea. He spent his entire life wrestling with this terrifying paradox right at the heart of our modern world. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how he tried to solve it. So, to really get Habermas, first you have to understand the problem he was up against. You see, the 20th century was supposed to be this huge win for the Enlightenment. Science, progress, reason leading us into a brighter future. But, well, it didn't exactly turn out that way, did it? This quote from Theodor Adorno, who was actually one of Habermas's teachers, just captures that feeling of disillusionment so brutally. The point he's making is just stark. All our amazing technical and scientific progress didn't automatically make us better people. It didn't make us more free. It just gave us scarier, more powerful ways to destroy each other. And that leads to the big, haunting question for thinkers like him. How is it possible that the same era that gave us incredible scientific breakthroughs also gave us Auschwitz and the atomic bomb? This wasn't just some random fluke. It felt like it was somehow baked into the logic of modernity itself. Okay, so this is where Habermas enters the story. But instead of just giving up on reason and progress, he decided to dig deeper. He wanted to get back to the absolute basics of how we, as human beings, operate in the world, to see if he could somehow untangle the good parts of Enlightenment from all the terror. So his starting point is this really simple but totally profound observation. He says that as a species, we basically have two core interests, two completely different ways of acting that shape, well, pretty much everything we do. He calls these our two worlds. On one side, you've got labor. This is all about what he calls instrumental reason. It's about getting stuff done, being efficient, controlling the world around us to meet our physical needs. Think of it like a one-way street, a monologue. But then on the other side, you have communication. This world isn't about efficiency at all. It's about reaching a mutual understanding. It's a dialogue, a two-way street, all about connecting with other people. And this is the part that is absolutely crucial to understand. For Habermas, our identity, our very sense of who we are, isn't built in that world of labor. We don't become fully human just by being productive little workers. No, we become selves through communication, through that back and forth of genuine dialogue, where we actually see ourselves through the eyes of others. So this brings us right to his diagnosis of what's gone wrong in the modern world. If our very humanity is built on this foundation of communication, what happens when that communication gets broken? What happens when the logic of one world, the world of efficiency and control, invades the other? He has a name for this. He calls it systematically distorted communication. It's what happens when our conversations stop being about actually understanding each other. Instead, they get twisted and warped by these hidden forces. By power, by money, by ideologies that just shut down any real debate before it can even start. Here's a perfect real-world example of what he means. Imagine some union members trying to figure out what to do. Someone says this line. And what happens? The conversation just dies. It's said like it's just a simple fact of life, but really, it's a statement that kills any possibility of further discussion. And, surprise, surprise, it serves the interests of the people in power. That right there is systematically distorted communication in action. Okay, so if our communication is broken, how in the world do we fix it? Well, to find a cure, Habermas looked to a very surprising place for a social theorist. He looked inside the psychoanalyst's office. He was really inspired by Freud's talking cure. Think about it for a second. A patient talks, and in doing so, they start to reveal these hidden blocks, these distortions in their own life story. The analyst then offers a possible interpretation. But, and this is the key part, the cure doesn't work unless both the patient and the analyst agree on that interpretation. It has to be a shared understanding. And through that shared process, the block gets removed. This whole idea of a talking cure led Habermas to his most famous, and maybe his most optimistic, concept. He thought, okay, if we can see what distorted communication looks like, then what would pure, healthy, undistorted communication look like? What's the ideal? And he called it the ideal speech situation. Now, to be clear, this isn't some place that actually exists in the real world. You should think of it more like a North Star, a set of perfect conditions that we can try to aim for if we want to create real consensus and truth just by talking to each other.
And the rules are actually pretty simple, things we all kind of know deep down. In this ideal conversation, everyone, and I mean everyone, has an equal chance to speak and to question anything. My job title or my bank account doesn't make my argument better. And we all agree to try to be truthful, to be sincere, to stay on topic, and to argue for what is morally right. It's this incredibly radical vision of total equality in conversation.
At the end of the day, in this ideal scenario, we don't make decisions based on who the boss is, or who shouts the loudest, or who has the most authority. The only thing that has any real power is what Habermas famously called the unforced force of the better argument. Reason itself is the only authority we should listen to. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds amazing, but also maybe a little too perfect for the real world. And you wouldn't be alone. This theory got some serious pushback, but understanding how Habermas answered his critics, that reveals the whole point of his entire life's work. The biggest criticism was basically this. Isn't this just an elitist fantasy? Is he just trying to make all of society look like a big university seminar? A place where people like him, professors, get to talk all day? What about cooks and janitors and coal miners? Is this a model for them too? Habermas's answer to this is just profound. He says, if you think that, you've completely missed the point. True enlightenment isn't a lecture that an expert gives to a patient. There are no experts and patients, no leaders and followers. In a real process of enlightenment, there can only be participants. Everybody has a seat at the table. And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. The whole goal of this massive, lifelong project was to perform a kind of delicate surgery on our modern world, to carefully separate the promise of enlightenment, reason, freedom, dialogue, from the absolute terror and barbarism that it had gotten tangled up with. He wanted to save reason, not throw it away. In the end, what Habermas is giving us is a defense of a very fragile hope. It's the hope that, despite all the ways power and money distort our world, we still have this deep, shared human interest in understanding each other. And that maybe, just maybe, if we could create the space to truly speak freely to one another, we could finally find our way out of the darkness.